Hello, you're listening to Abstract AF. I'm Sneha Jaswal, and in this episode, I'm going to be reviewing the novel The Mountain Sing by Nguyen Phan Quay Mai. Spread over a little more than 300 pages, this historical fiction book starts off in Hanoi in 1972. The protagonist is a young schoolgirl called Huong walking to school with her grandmother, a teacher. In an ironical twist of fate, in the very second page, just when Fuang's granny promises her her favorite meal to celebrate a brief break from bombings in the city, a siren pierces through the sky, warning citizens that the American bombers are approaching their city. So the book starts off with a bang, quite literally. And well, Phuong's home is charged to the ground, and it marks the beginning of a tragic saga covering almost four generations of a Vietnamese family. So the author makes us travel further back in time to 1930s when Phuong's grandmother Deolan was a mere girl herself. And every alternate chapter in the novel ping-pongs between the present period, that's in the 1970s, and flashbacks of Deolan's life. It's really the grandmother who is the central protagonist of this novel. And while we usually see stories focusing on the rags to riches growth for central characters, Deolan goes from riches to rags. Her family suffers terribly during the 1940s, some almost dying out of hunger due to a famine that swept the north of Vietnam, which was under Japanese occupation at the time. Author Nguyen Phan Quay Mai is able to vividly create a fictional world that helps one understand a lot about her country's history. She covers political, social, and domestic aspects of life in Vietnam and how propaganda has the power to divide not just a nation, but also loving families. While she doesn't do a deep dive into the ideologies of Vietnamese leaders, we get a fair idea about the kind of narrative that was being propagated and peddled to the youth at the time. The best bit about this novel for those who can read English is the fact that this book has been written originally in the English language, so there's no scope for things to be lost in translation. Her English is simple to read, which is great because the content itself is filled with so many traumatic events that you don't need a heavy, flowery language to embellish things. As far as character development goes, Grandma Deolan is a force to be reckoned with. She is a fierce, iron-willed individual who is all about protecting her family and ensuring that they thrive. Even after all the men she looks up to are gone, it doesn't break her spirit and she soldiers on. She's an inspiring, tragic hero kind of a figure, while Huong, her teenage granddaughter, who's the other primary protagonist, she doesn't have a very impressionable personality. All we know about her is that she likes to read books. She's almost brat-like in her attitude, a little too naive for someone who is being raised in a war-torn nation. But a teenage life and simpler experiences serve as both a great break and an interesting contrast against the horrifying realities being faced by her other family members. This is a very well-researched book. The marketing team for the novel has compared it to the historical fiction bestseller Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I have read that one too, and I think those who like reading Pachinko will like reading The Mountain Sing too, although the comparisons are a little unfair to the author, just for the sure fact that it might create distorted expectations among readers. Unlike The Mountain Sing, Pachinko in fact has the quintessential rags to riches theme. It's also much broader in its scope. It focuses on an immigrant Korean family that moves to Japan and explores themes of immigrant struggles, racial profiling, toxic stereotyping, whereas The Mountain Sing doesn't really have any of that. Deolan's clan is persecuted by their own village folk. And then there's, of course, the struggle between the North and South Vietnamese and the kind of hatred that existed between the two sides. So obviously there's a lot of conflict in the book, and that's where the author's simple language works against her. Her prose is good, but not powerful enough to stir up strong emotions in the reader. That said, it still does a great job of enlightening foreign readers of the impact of war and how the Vietnamese were devastated by the use of Agent Orange by the American military. So if one message does shine through the book, it's the futility of war. The Sena characters only hope for peace. What bothered me a little about the novel was the fact that the story puts too much emphasis on women's sexual purity. Now, I do understand that it needs to be seen in context. The novel is set in a time where women were treated like second-hand citizens, and the author brilliantly displays how things get only worse for women in the times of war. But what was problematic was the self-inflicted mental torture by some of the women characters. I don't want to reveal any plot point or give spoilers, so I'll give you a random example. Say a girl gets a bad rash on her neck, but instead of going to the doctor and getting an ointment for it, the girl weeps and weeps, not because of the pain or irritation the rash is causing, but because her boyfriend would be upset that her neck is not beautiful anymore. Now, this might be a frivolous example, but I'm just saying how society conditions women to place the feelings of the men in their lives before their own pain and needs. Again, the novel does have stronger women characters, and all the gender based trauma the characters face are absolutely in sync with the era the story unfolds in, but that obviously cannot stop modern readers from not being upset over it. Overall, The Mountains Sing is a gripping tale. Its climax was a little predictable in the sense that it had a very movie kind of an ending with a cliche twist in the story. The author did not need to throw in a last minute conflict, but maybe a lot of readers would like the heightened tears and drama in that last chapter. Since I'm from India, I would say it had a very Bollywoodish ending, but yeah, I guess it's an entertaining way of doing it. Definitely get a copy of The Mountain Sing if you've never read any Vietnamese fiction. It's a 4 on 5 from me. That's all for this episode. Talk to you in the next one.